Oh, it was very important. My parents wanted me to get educated so that I wouldn't have to work as hard as my father worked in order to make a living.
What did your father do?
My father, when I first knew him and I was born, he was an auto mechanic. And he did that up until, I guess, the beginning of World War II. And at World War II, he worked for the civil service at the Naval Air Station in Kingsville and in Corpus Christi, which were near Bishop, which is where we lived after I was 5 years old. And he did the refrigeration mechanics and like that for air conditioning and that type of thing for the Navy, but he was not in the Navy. He was in civil service, and that's what he did. And then after the war, he went to work for the Celanese Corporation, which was a big corporation that they had a plant there near Bishop, Texas. And he worked there until he died. Celanese had what they call these cooling ponds, I guess you would call it. And during certain types of the year, the weather was bad, and we would have what would be like a fog all over the city from the chemicals that they had dispersed in those ponds. And the fog would be so bad that you could hardly see to drive, and it would last all day long. It wasn't just a morning thing. It was like fog from the chemicals. And I kind of believe that that's what caused my father's brain tumor that he had and he died from when he was 57. My little sister, who was born when I was a sophomore at college, also died from a cancer-type disease when she was 9. And I'm sure that it was also had something to do with all the emissions that this chemical plant did. My mother did not work. She was a housewife, and she took care of her 3 daughters. Usually it was just 2 because my older sister was already married before the little one was born. And she did a good job taking care of us. See? Now then, let's see. When I was a first grader, I started to school, and we had a 3-story school building. The bottom floor, which was really a basement, had the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades in it. And our windows were ground level where we could see outside, but it was the basement nevertheless. And I went to the 1st grade there, and I had this teacher named Miss Gill. And she had been teaching 1st grade for I don't know how long, but every year her husband would give her a diamond for her ring or wherever she wanted it. And she had rings all over her fingers, which meant she'd been teaching a long time. She didn't have any children of her own, and she was so good at teaching phonics that I've never had any problem with spelling because she was such a good teacher and had been for all those years. When I was a 1st grader, they bought me something. It would be like a tonette now, but it was called a sax set then, and it was a little silver instrument that had little holes on it to play music, and apparently I did pretty well in it. I don't really remember that I did well, but during the summer then the band director talked my parents into buying me a clarinet when I could barely hold one. And so when I was a 2nd grader, I was already a clarinet player and in the high school band. Not that good because I played 3rd clarinet at the time, but nevertheless I was in the high school band when I was 8 years old. And I loved my 2nd grade teacher. She had a piano in her room, and she could play anything. And so she'd play the piano every day, and we would all sing with her. And it was just such a happy year, my 2nd year at school. 3rd year, when I was a 3rd grader, I don't remember much about my teacher. I know her name was Miss Schrader, and I liked her, but all I remember was that we had these bookcases with all kinds of books that you could check out. So I was constantly checking out books to read. And then the next year, you'd think I'd be in the 4th grade, but at that time there was only 11 grades in the school system. So they decided to add one more, and so they added a 4th grade, which I skipped, and they let me be a fifth grader. And they put some back in fourth and some in fifth. And the fifth graders went up in the third floor of the school. And that was kind of fun for me because get to go up all those stairs up to the top of the school was kind of exciting. And that was the fifth grade. And then in the sixth grade, I don't remember a lot about the sixth grade, but I remember that I weighed 62 pounds. And the reason I remembered it because it had a 6 in it, and I was in the sixth grade, and that seemed special to me at that time. I guess it was. I still remember it. Then I went to the seventh grade, and I had a teacher named Ms. Wimsett, and she was very good about English and spelling, and it helped everybody in class. She was just really, really good.
What's one thing that you tell your grandchildren, like proper grammar, done and finished? Is that like your biggest pet peeve?
Yes.
Explain to us your biggest pet peeve.
One of my biggest pet peeves, and I think it's been used by so many people now that it's probably going to become correct, is when my grandchildren talk to me and they have finished doing something, they'll say, "I'm done." And I want them to say, "I've finished," not "I'm done." And they're learning, but it's slow. And I guess I might have gotten that from Miss Wimsett anyway. She was one of my good English teachers, but my high school teacher was my best English teacher ever. My eighth grade teacher was named Ms. Robbins, and she would help, well, me and one other girl. She helped us with what they call number sense, and we would go to her class after school, and she would give us clever ways to figure out the answer to a problem without having to use a pencil for it. And just lots of different ideas of what you could do in your head to figure out an answer. And so then they had these regional meetings, and so this girl and I went to regional, and we won first in number sense, and I was excited about that. And another exciting moment was when I was a seventh grader. I was one of the 3 girls chosen from the 7th grade to play on the 8th grade girls softball team. And we went to regionals and won that. And I hit several home runs, which they probably had a poor pitcher, but anyway, I hit several home runs, and I was kind of proud of that. And then in my freshman year, they had torn down the old 3-story building and built a brand new school. 1-story school building. And I was the first high school freshman to start there and graduate. I mean, my class was. And so we had a brand new building when I was a freshman in high school. And I can remember taking home economics and learning how to cook and how to sew and how to clean house and how to do dishes and stuff like that. I already knew how to do dishes somehow or other. My mother had taught me that. Didn't like it, but I learned it when I was young. And then I took band when I was a sophomore. They reorganized the band. They somehow or other had disbanded about the time I think I was a 6th grader. They didn't have band anymore at school at all. So then they got a new teacher, and his name was Mr. Foster. And he was from Bishop, Texas. And his mother was a piano teacher there, and he was our band director. He was so nice, and he helped me so much with my clarinet. And when I was a junior then, I got to go to regional band and then all-state band. I made the all-state band in Texas when I was a junior in high school, also when I was a senior. And what was funny is when I went to regional band, I made 2nd chair. There was a guy from Corpus Christi that was really, really good who got 1st chair. And by the way, he used to play for Lawrence Welk's band after that. He was that good. And anyway, I got 2nd chair in regional. And while I was there, there was this smart aleck guy that was from Victoria, Texas, that I just really could not stand, who later on ended up being my husband. But when I was in high school, it was just a smart aleck. That's what I thought he was. But anyway, I was so happy that I beat him in getting seated in the band. And then, let's see,